The first time anybody wanted to turn Stardust into a film, I don't think it had even been published yet. It was, I was working for Miramax on something else and talking to Bob Weinstein, and Bob said, "What are you working on now?" And I said, "Oh, I've just finished this thing called Stardust." "What's it about?" And I told him. He said, "I'll buy it." And I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yeah." And he did, immediately. I suddenly found myself, for once, trying to write an outline for Stardust, which is one reason why, when some years later, Matthew came to me and said, "Did I want to write the script?" I said, "Absolutely not." Stardust was not built to be a film. I wrote it as a novel. There is so much damage that you need to do to the novel to turn it into a film, and I don't want to be the one doing the damage. That was what I learned when I looked at doing it, which really left me going, I think somebody else should do this.
I remember reading it in LA and loving it, absolutely, really just thinking, when I read it, I saw the film immediately, which was always a good sign if you're going to try and make a film out of it. And it was back then, I was telling people I've found a book where I could make a Princess Bride meets Midnight Run movie, which I think everyone thought I was insane. I just knew, I read it and I just, as I said, the film was in my head and as far as I'm concerned, it was meant to be. And it was just a good story, good characters, and it was original as well. I thought we could make a type of film that people hadn't seen for a long time.
What Matthew brings is a very firm grounding in the independent film world. And the challenge in making this movie for him was how to translate that, I'll call it smaller aesthetic, to a much larger canvas, and yet hold on to the things that I think make him such a unique and vibrant filmmaker.
I wrote a very, what I call a rough draft, and it took about 2 weeks, and totally changed the third act. The third act in the book just was not cinematic. It just ended in a very sort of unheroic and not terribly exciting but sweet way, which wasn't good enough for a film. And I then teamed up with Jane, and together we turned a rough sketch of a screenplay into a fully financeable script, which happened very quickly.
Matthew had certainly had it in his mind to do Stardust, and he was setting up everything that he needed in order to do that, and he was looking for somebody to write the script or to work with, and I believe he met with a number of people, but we were introduced, and it was just one of those lovely serendipitous things where we seemed to think along very similar lines, and we got on well, and I was extremely excited and grateful when Matthew said that he'd like me to do it. It was a while since I'd read it, and it was lovely to read it again with a completely different head on, really, with a view to sort of thinking about it in terms of translating it into film, as it were.
We all know cinema is a very different medium to books, and I think you have to make a good film first and foremost for people that haven't read the book or don't know the book, more than making a good movie for people who love the book and want it to be treated as, as a hallowed ground. Don't muck with the story or the structure. I always respected the soul of the book, but I think the first 60 pages of the book I covered in 2 pages in the script, which Neil was horrified about when he first read it. I think he was in a state of shock.
Stardust was not built to be a film. I wrote it as a novel, and a lot of the delights of Stardust as a novel are not filmic delights. I think a lot of what you have to do in a film is try and dramatize that. You have to turn that into event and turn it into action.
I think a lot of people have different ways of looking at it. I have a simple way, which is you have to be true to the spirit of the book more than you have to be literal. As long as you really find the touchstone pieces of the book, the rest of it, because it's a different medium, you can connect the way the medium connects as opposed to the way a book connects.
I felt it was incredibly important to hold on to all of the elements of the story, and they're quite diverse. I mean, there's a very real and very touching romance. There's also obviously adventure. There's a story of a boy becoming a man. Essentially, it has elements of a coming of age story. Whilst I think that any of those strands would in many ways be strong on their own, when they came together, I felt that was what made Stardust a very, very special story.
They'd send me scripts and I'd say, every now and again, you don't want to do this. And every now and again, as we went into the lead up, they'd say, oh, we're thinking of doing this. And I'd say, don't. Not a good idea. The fans would kill you if you did, because they'd think that you didn't care. And they go, oh, but our reason for doing this is this, this, and this. And I'd say, it's absolutely fine.
It was scary when we sent the very first draft to Neil, and we were so happy when he liked it. And we had a really nice weekend at Matthew's house where Neil came over sort of quite late after I think we were just fine-tuning it, really. And Matthew forced me and Neil to act out the entire script. At one point, Matthew did say, wish I had the camera on, especially when Neil and I were doing pirate accents. It was quite something to behold. I don't think acting's one of my talents, or accents for that matter. But it was good, and it was useful to. It was really useful to hear it out loud, and it was really nice to have Neil there putting in his comments.
I wanted to make it feel as realistic as possible. The fact that it's fantasy and fairy tales sort of makes you think it's going to be a very whimsical sort of, there's lots of cliches that come to mind as soon as you hear those two words, so I tried to avoid them by making it as grounded and, I said to people, yes, there's magic in this world, but magic in this world is like paying a bill in our world. It's just a thing that happens every day. It's matter of fact. It's nothing to get excited about. I based everything on, whether it was architecture or designs, on modern things that people would know, and then dress them in a way that they didn't look too out of place. Like the carriage was based on a Hummer car. The Witch's Lair was based on Versailles. So it was making people feel comfortable, but not too familiar.
You wanted to try and exclude it being Harry Potter. You wanted to exclude it being Lord of the Rings. There were certain things that you were looking at where you wanted to put it in a different sort of environment. So again, you have to get into the realities of things. Where can we go to shoot the movie? What sort of landscapes can we use? Can we go to Patagonia? Can we go to Iceland? Can we go to Scotland? Or can we only stay within the M25? Like a lot of films these days, the ambition is often stretching the financial resources to make a movie that in whatever millions we are, in the 50, 60, 70 million, looked like it was 140, 150, 160 million. That's what you're always trying to do, and it's always the biggest challenge because there's never enough money.
We made some creative choices about how to handle visually the movie, which allowed us to bring the cost down as well. And Jane Goldman, who adapted the novel with Matthew, also comes from a very independent spirit. So we were able to not only keep the price for this kind of movie extraordinarily, probably half as expensive as the movie will hopefully indicate.